Thank you for tuning in to the World Builders Anvil, episode 326. Today's exciting topic, big characters. We're talking like Godzilla, King Kong. We're talking big picture characters. Characters that were in big movie pictures. So we're talking like giant robots and like kaiju and it says big picture characters. What else are we
looking at? Characters for your story in the bigger picture than,
but like big versions. So like giants and like Minotaur.
If the story needs a big character, it might be, but more than likely it's going to be a human-sized character or maybe a dwarf-sized character. It could be any size of character. It's just big as in the big picture, not like so literal.
Your show notes are terrible.
Don't know where to start building your fantasy world?
Do you need more? Does it make sense?
Forget any worries and become a crafter of imagination.
This is the place where we will prime your mind.
Now, it's time to heat up the forge,
break out the mithril ingots and hammer.
Welcome to the World Builders Anvil. I'm Jeffrey W. Ingram.
And I'm Michael Miller.
Let's sup from the milk of Java and build. Welcome back, as always, filling out the show notes as we speak. My name is Jeffrey W. Ingram.
And shrunken down to size, I am Michael Miller.
Yeah. He needs to be... I'm just not going to go there. Okay.
I wanted to talk kaiju.
Kaiju. No. It has to be good.
Ever the killjoy.
Well, so today I want to talk a little bit in real life terms. I just done an interview with Irrational Radio. They're a live stream Twitch about world building. So if you don't get enough, I go over to Twitch and check out Irrational Radio. My interview might be somewhere. They just like stream the stuff and it goes away. So I guess you have to go to YouTube if you want to find actual old episodes. So if I can find the one with me in there, I'll link it in the episode. But it got me thinking because they're asking me a lot of questions, and some of the questions that came up made me start thinking about characters. And I think about characters, and oftentimes we talk about characters as in its own thing. It's like the character Mike and his hero's journey versus the villain Michael. So a lot of times we think of like individual characters or maybe their direct relationship with each other, and sometimes once they're created we think about them in conjunction with each other. But do we ever think about the characters sort of like a plot outline, before we start telling the story? And so that's kind of my call to action today is let's think about the characters as part of the plot before we start storytelling. And
before we start creating the characters themselves, which is ironic for us to talk about it from this perspective because you and I both love characters.
The details,
we just love characters. And a lot of times what we're going to write is going to start with a idea for one character or an idea for a story about one character, and then we're just going to start adding things to it. But this is coming from more of a macro perspective where you're looking at all of the potential characters before you start assembling what you're going to do.
Most definitely, I think I don't think it's wrong to necessarily have ideas, especially for like maybe your antagonist or maybe your protagonist or maybe even both. But as you start fleshing out the characters that you need for scenes, you kind of need your plot outline first. You kind of need to know where the story is going to go, because that will kind of inform you some of the things that you're going to need as characters. So, the first thing I think you should think about is, what's your story? Have a basic, and this is like a bullet point plot outline, no details, but then you'll sort of get an idea of the types of scenes you're going to have. And in there, you're going to need certain types of interactions to propel your story forward. So as you flesh out your plot outline, you probably have an idea of a protagonist or an antagonist, because usually, I know for me, it's usually like that interaction is kind of what gives me an idea for a story. So you might have a little bit, but you won't know all of the characters. And the problem is, and Michael will always agree with me because he knows I'm always right. He might not admit to it, but he always agrees with me. A lot of times when casts get too large in especially a TV show or in a novel, especially, it's even harder. The larger the cast becomes of characters, when you're consuming it, the harder it is to keep track of what the hell's going on. And Game of Thrones, when it was really good, you'd almost forget about characters. And that was probably a better way to deal with a large cast is to let them kind of, go away for a little while and then pop back up temporally later in the story, going about what their plans are. Because the problem, you don't go through all the drudgery of every, I don't know how many characters there were in that series, but there are quite a few. And the problem is, and it's not even bad fiction. It's just it takes a lot more effort to keep up if there are lots of characters. One of the reasons I think Harry Potter works is at the core of the story there are very few characters. In novels there will be extra ones and they will come and go, usually being killed. After they're introduced, but you have a core character that goes in the overarching story of the however many books there were in that series. So.
6 or 7.
Yeah. There's like Harry's team. There's Draco. There's.
I thought you were talking about the number of books in the series.
Yeah. I don't know how many books there were. It's been a while.
It's 6 or 7.
6 or 7.
Not
it's
including
a decent sized
books.
series.
Yeah.
And not all of the stories broken up into multiple stories, which leads to boring movies. But that's okay. But still, I think the thing you need to do is when you're making your story, you'll have ideas of some of the characters going into it, and that's okay because there's no real correct way to make it. There's no formula that works when you're creating a character cast. Now that's a total lie in a way, because when you choose a genre, you're almost picking out the formula of characters that you're going to have, but. There isn't one formula that works, and I'm a big advocate of making tweaks to formulas so it's not quite the same or you're hybriding one with another one. So always keep in mind that if you know your story and the themes of your story, that helps tell you if you're trying to get into a really intimate discussion about people, you don't want a huge cast of people, you want a very small cast. But if you're going epic, you're probably going to have a larger cast, but some of the characters won't be fleshed out as well. So keep that in mind. I always think, do you want is this a solo hero experience, or is this an ensemble hero experience? Or protagonist, I guess it's not always hero. But is the story being told from an ensemble or from the point of view of a person? Whether or not it's in the book.
Well, I think you're saying two different things there. Mm-hmm. One, you're talking about perspective. So is it being told from the protagonist, or is it switching perspectives between each character, which is one characteristic of the book?
Yeah.
But the thing you were starting to say, and I thought you were going to, is if you're telling a story, basically, I'm not going to be able to word it quite the way you just said. I wish I caught all of your wording. Basically, whether you're telling the story about one character, like you're focusing on the one character, and you're going to get a lot more in depth on that one character.
True, I got sucked into perspective when that wasn't the point. Yeah,
right, and you're not getting in as much detail about the periphery characters. In that case, of course, you're going to tell about other characters, but it feels less ensemble if you're not going to. Actually, I don't want to say that that's not true. Actually, because when you do have a story. Because now I'm coming up with stories in my mind where you do have clearly a focused main character, but you have a lot of other characters that contribute a lot, then that would be defined as ensemble.
But you're starting to approach it, so to me, it's about who are the words in the book about, and if it's about multiple people, it's an ensemble cast. And if it's about focused on one character, it is a solo story. And most aren't true either way. Okay. So you might have a hero that has a close group of companions, your party group in fantasy terms.
Yeah.
Even though one character is really kind of the lead protagonist, the other ones are right there nipping at his heels. Where other times, you're going to have your lead character, who is the character. Like Hunger Games. It's really about the girl.
Yeah, it's about Katniss.
And where there is some words about other characters that's important, that's about the story, it's really everything revolves around Katniss. It's very centered on her. So it depends on how you want to do it. Then there's no right or wrong way here. I typically like ensembles because I get bored with overly powerful characters unless I'm playing them in a video game.
So we're going to define ensemble as the story is about the other characters, not just that they're featured in the story, but it's actually about them in addition to their it's always about all of them.
It could be either way. So it could be moments, you just don't have, a majority of the book going to any one character. It's split apart, and each of the things they're doing are integral to completing the plot, and that's kind of the key too. It's like, it's not just a side adventure. It's something integral that is needed, that without that person's skill set or moment, the story doesn't reach its completion.
Can't get through this door. Bring in the thief.
Exactly. Wait, listen. Do you smell that? You need the guy to say that.
I love that line. Can't wait for the new one.
A great ensemble.
Okay.
But then also, my suggestion is, though, for all of your characters in your book, though, create them before you create your characters.
So when you say this, because I was just reading this show note, do you mean create it as an archetype?
Create it as in what you need for a scene. So as you're going through, and you're looking back at your plot outline, go through and sit there and go, okay, there's going to be a discussion here. I'm going to need a character with this perspective. And so here's a character without a name, just like here are the archetype kind of character I need here.
So it's almost you're almost like building it formulaically, so that you get to a point and you're not stuck. You're not like, oh, I need this thing, but
let me just create a new character called Bill, who's going to be in one scene,
right? Yeah, right. Just to offer the opposing viewpoint that you that none of the characters you've created has.
And that's Bill, BZRRRLYLLIRRLLRRIIL. And most of the letters are silent.
Very complicated.
So it's actually pronounced Bill.
And I kind of like, as long as it is firmly, as long as you can support it. I like it when a character has a perspective that they have not shared, and then all of a sudden, because of certain circumstances, it doesn't necessarily have to erupt, but it certainly comes to the surface.
I love erupting,
and gonna let that go. And it comes to the surface, and you're like, why is this character behaving this way? But then they, especially if the character themselves, will look, because XYZ happened, that's why I feel about this. And then you're like, oh yeah, XYZ did happen, and that is totally a valid perspective for this character. But it's just something that I, the reader or player, hadn't considered at that point.
And it works the best when you sit there and go, that made sense earlier. Now there was this thing earlier, that it didn't feel wrong, but I didn't think about it, but now I can get more meaning out of an earlier scene because of knowing this later information.
Yeah, I find it to be, really at this point we're talking about reveals. I'm a big fan of when you can have a character that has a motivation or a backstory or something that completely fits with the way they act, the way they behave, things they say, but the things they say could easily be interpreted a different way until the reveal. And then the reveal puts everything into a new perspective for the reader, the player, what have you, which I'm a big fan of that.
Yeah, foreshadowing and isn't just for plot points. It's you can foreshadow someone's opinions. You can almost always tell who the love interest is within 2 seconds of meeting them. But yeah, so the thing is, when you go through, unless it's your protagonist or it's one of these characters that are firm in your head, when you're starting your story outline, just it's a nameless, faceless character, and so essentially, then once you kind of know basically kind of what you need. This is kind of the way I like to think about it. There are types of characters and jobs of characters. You have protagonist and antagonist, and that can go into plurals if you wish as well too. You have companions; those are people close to either the antagonist or the protagonist, and then you have side characters, which can range anywhere from town guard A, who gives the party some gruff as they exit the town, or it could be the mentor who comes in at the beginning of the book, puts a mark on the door and then gets a group of people together and kind of shows up every 5 chapters, usually to solve whatever problem the idiots he's put together can't seem to solve on their own. So it's like you have sort of like, I kind of like to think of it as like essentially the 3 layers: your super important characters, your antagonist, protagonist, your companions, and then your side characters. And then there's the job of the characters. And this is largely the archetypes and tropes, So your love interest, your foils, your family members, your mentors, your extras, which I do consider an archetype. Guard A is an archetype. But it could be any kind of tropes there. It's what is the purpose needed? And that was kind of what you were thinking about earlier. So now the idea is sit there to go, okay, if I make a companion who has this certain archetype, what scenes does that put them into? What scene is that character needed for now? And then it's like, you know what? The grumpy old man goes really well with the pervert. So I need a pervert in a couple scenes. So I'm going to add that as a sub-trait in for this other character. And so now I'm starting to merge together some of those nameless characters from the beginning to create a little bit more complicated character for my story. So that way it's like, maybe I have 30 characters listed out that I know I'm going to need to make the story work when I get done with my outline. I want to merge that down, because once you start getting over 6 or 7 characters, consider anything else to probably be an extra. And it could be an important extra, like that town guard who gives you gruff is going to be there every time you go in and out of town. But the only interaction, only thing you're going to really know from him is he's just a jerk to the party whenever they go in and out of town. He gives them gruff. And maybe in book 2, he becomes a real character, but it doesn't matter. Or at some other point, he could develop into a character beyond his role of just being a jerk as they go in and out of town. But realize once you get beyond 6 or 7 characters in stories, it starts to become overwhelming for players to track them. It's, I think, a little bit easier at tabletop because a lot of the players will have notes, of who they meet and stuff like that. But I'm not a big believer in forcing. Have to, treat your story as a exercise in note taking. That's usually not the most fun way to interact with stories. So, you want to merge them down. You want 6 or 7 characters you're going to talk about that are kind of weaving in and out of your story. And then you're going to have a couple more. And now naturally, as stories go on, they're going to get larger. And you might have even more characters, world building wise, who are important, but they're not important in the story. So they don't necessarily need to be developed. So, the thing I think to keep in mind is, and I know Michael and I have talked about before about building great characters. I don't even remember what episode. If I can remember what it is, I'll link it in the show notes here. If you can figure it out, just text me.
And by great, you mean huge, like great size, like kaiju size, like really large, like great.
We're
like
not talking about giant monsters. Just like great, as in characters people love. Even if they hate
people love Godzilla, and Godzilla is so big.
Yes,
like
people
you just call
can
him
love large characters.
Great,
but most of the characters that people like are probably around normal human size.
You're such a disappointment.
But we always talk about it's the twist and the characters that are interesting. It's the things that even when the twist reinforces the archetype. It's something. It's an unexpected way to reinforce the archetype.
Now, you when you say twist, are you talking about a reveal of of a aspect of the character,
another aspect of the character, yeah.
Or are you referring to also like storyline? Like
it could be like a sub archetype. So it's a veteran warrior who does it because he loves peace. Because he's a hippie at heart.
Fighting for peace, sort of thing.
Fighting for peace, wherever there's trouble.
I'm reminded of Mal kicking Crow into the engine, because that was a bit of a twist that supported the archetype, because we didn't see that coming.
Did not see that coming. That's the perfect example always. Anyone who hasn't seen it yet, go watch.
I'm due.
The Expanse.
I actually think that I'm gonna pop that in. Like just the other day, I was like, I haven't watched Firefly in a while. I think I'm due to watch the whole series again. So
yeah, unfortunately, it doesn't take very long. But if they've teased us enough about creating more content, and then they never do anyway. So I'm starting to think that maybe they're not going to do a new series.
You're starting to think that.
No, you're right. I'm giving up too soon.
Hang in there, brown coats.
Yeah, but the thing is, keep in mind, and we talk about this a lot. It's like when you're sharing a story with people, you're asking them to see and interact with things that are in your mind. So the thing you have to remember is it takes effort. If it's like the more you like, if you do a fantasy story, but the more you deviate from the fantasy structure when you do that, the people who are reading it, who mostly know the structure, are going to have to spend extra brain power figuring out and holding on to those new threads. The more characters you add in, the more of their brain they have to spend on understanding, what you're trying to convey to them in the story. So the more times you deviate, the more times that you break away, the more things that you ask people to use their brain on, makes it less of their brain left to enjoy any of it. That's why there's some things I've seen that have been brilliant that I'll never watch again, because and I've said this, I watched it and I liked it, but it hurt my brain. And that's just because I felt exhausted after consuming fiction, which is, in its way, it's a good thing, but I seriously doubt anything like that will ever become a cult classic. It might be a cult classic, but it'll never become popular because too many people will just give up on it. It's kind of when I joke around about reading Atlas Shrugged, and I can't get past the first 80 pages, and I can't. And I've tried a few times to read it, and I get bored, and she's trying to introduce too much stuff, and to me, it just seems like a repetitive slog. And I keep hearing, if you get past those first 8 pages, it's really good, and I might get there someday, but not today. But always think about that at the end. So you've gone through, you figure out the type of story you want to write, you figure out the characters you need, you start going through the types of characters and giving them jobs. And that's not their job in the story. That's not like he's a carpenter. That's a character thing.
It's their task in the story.
Their job in the story, exactly. And then when you merge them together, one of the questions you ask is, can I merge things together? Does it make sense?
Yeah.
It'll help you develop the character better, but it'll give you those twists that make those more memorable characters. So.
See, for a second, when I read your note that said merge together, I thought you were talking about, like, do you have too many characters? Can you merge certain characters together into one?
That's what I'm saying, but it's the generic blank characters from the beginning. You're merging into one. So you take the companion who is a thief, but you find out halfway through he's also a loving father. And the reason he's a thief is because his family lost their farm, and he has kids that are going to die if he does not supply them with money and food. And as a farmer, it takes a really long time to get the crops back. So he spent a season trying to, acquire some funds for his family, got pulled in, is now an outlaw. And you don't realize the big bad outlaw is really a loving father, which is why he started. It was just something he had to do to get his family to survive. But because of notoriety catching on too quickly, is forced into a life of crime. So, it's like you can take two jobs that are needed for a story and merge them into one. So later on, when the protagonist is sitting there trying to struggle on, what to do, he can get the fatherly advice from the big baddie. Maybe even the antagonist, who knows? Don't follow my footsteps, Michael. It's only a life of heartache. Stay good, my friend.
Never.
Yeah,
because I know what I have to do, but I don't know if I'm strong enough to do it.
that's right.
You don't recognize that one?
I don't recognize that one.
No, that's what Kylo Ren says to Han Solo before he stabs him.
Oh, who? Kylo who?
Ben Solo.
Who? I'm sorry. I don't remember a third trilogy at this point. Have you seen the final one? Did you?
I have. Yeah.
I think we talked a little bit about it.
It was good. It was good.
Helped
It brought
a little bit.
It definitely helped repair. There was one instance, a scene, like one thing that occurred in the middle of the movie that I literally out loud was like, get the fuck out of here. Which I didn't.
Well, like knowing the overarching plot points,
it didn't need to be done. And when I saw it, I saw it just before the.
Was it just like a piece of fan service being done, or
no? Well, it might have been a piece of pandering. I don't know. I saw it just before the COVID lockdown, so it was literally the last movie I saw in theaters, and I wasn't sure I was going to be able to see it, but the theater was still open. So I went there. It was only 4 of us in the theater, me and these 3 guys sitting a little bit
right next to each other.
I was so hoping I was going to see it by myself, because I saw it on like a Tuesday at like noon. So I thought, this is going to be perfect. Nobody's going to be there.
Look at those 3 losers watching the movie at this time.
Yeah. So when I had my little outburst, they all laughed because I'm sure were thinking something similar. Thing. Yeah. But aside to that, there is some really great set pieces. There's some pretty. It's worth watching.
I would argue, though, as a storytelling thing, it was total. The overall arch of who the villain was and stuff was a total. Was a total. Like, you don't just pull him as the villain and have nothing in the stories before that foreshadow this. So.
Well, that's the thing. What they do.
It shows there's no real plan to the trilogy that was cohesive.
The third one ties a lot of things together well. But I agree with you. I think, and this is, I hate to say this because I really like Rian Johnson. I think the problem was that they had Rian Johnson do the second movie. I think if they had, if they had,
or they gave him too much freedom in what he could do. There was no overarching story, and he kind of took the story in the way he wanted to. So he zags one way, and then, because people not liking the way he zagged, then you have J.J. Abrams trying to zag back to.
If they had just given J.J. the helm for all 3 and gave him, I loved what he did with the first movie. I loved what he did with the third movie, but in the third movie, he had to do a lot of backpedaling and. He had to wedge things in there to make it fit with what the second movie did. And the funny thing is when he read the second script when he had, after either near when he had done the first one or whatever. And after reading the second script, he was like, oh man, I wish I was doing this one. Like he really wanted to do the second movie, but Rian Johnson had already been, appointed.
Well, I'd say the major problem I have with the series is a lot of the characters weren't really important, but this is exactly what we're talking about, right? There were a lot of characters who were there for no reason.
Yeah.
And this is the thing, my problem with Captain Marvel is the same problem I have with Rey. And it's not that she's a powerful character. It's why do they make all of these powerful female characters who are supposed to be fighting against the matriarchy so stoic? It takes away any ways to interact with them on a person-to-person level.
Yeah, they're
always super stoic. And
it's like empathy.
It's like you're trying to make them into a Superman style character, which is ironic because, isn't the whole point to have them not controlled by the matriarchy or the patriarchy? I'm sorry.
See, I don't know that I would give it to you give you that Rey is stoic as a, like, I believe
maybe in the third movie.
I believe she displays stoicism here and there, but I think she's
that's true.
A nicely emotional character.
It's stoic and then just angry, and somehow being a Luke Skywalker all the time. I don't know. I'm gonna disagree with you on that one. Okay, maybe I'm wrong. I found pretty much all of the characters in the third trilogy to be highly forgettable, except for the Stormtrooper guy. I enjoyed his character.
Which one?
The Stormtrooper.
Which Stormtrooper?
The fifth one. He gets shot.
Oh, yeah. Yes, very impressive. Okay, so we're going to bring this in?
Or it could have been a she, I guess. I have no clue.
That's true.
Armor. Not the captain one. She was no good.
I know. Why didn't they do more with her? That was disappointing.
I did finally see the Mandalorian before we wrap this up. Lots of good characters in there. That was enjoyable.
I think one of these days I'm going to pull the trigger.
Points.
I'm going to have to get Disney Plus because I really do want to see the Mandalorian.
Hey, do you have Verizon?
I do.
Because I think we get it for free or at a reduced price because we have Verizon.
But I assume that Disney Plus.
You're paying for it already, essentially, so you might as well get it.
Is it? It's available on like PlayStation and Xbox, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Because I would have to.
I don't know about Xbox. We watch it on. It has apps probably on everything.
Well, actually, here's the problem. I'm gonna have to. I won't get into it. It's complicated.
Like a Fire Stick or a Roku stick or. No.
Okay, if you're gonna press, the basic gist is, the system I use for Netflix is a PlayStation 3. I've had it for I've had it for so.
It might not be in PlayStation 3. Yeah.
I've had it for so long that the email address that was attached to the account
is
lost to time because Microsoft screwed me big time.
Oh, that
remember when that happened? Yes. Right. So when that happened, that email no longer exists, but my PlayStation is tied to it. So I can't update anything on that PlayStation or it bricks the system because there is no way for me to access the account or reset the password. Mm-hmm. So like one of these days I've been like literally for like 2-3 years now, I've been like, one of these days I'm just going to have to call PlayStation and sit on the phone for 3 hours and iron this out. Mm-hmm. And I've already bricked another PlayStation because I have 3 PlayStation 3s.
Can you do like a factory reset on it and just like put a new account?
But my account maybe.
Oh, but you'll lose the thing that you purchased.
I'll lose my account is attached to it. Yeah. So I have 3 PlayStation 3s, none of which I have purchased. I've been given all of them for free, and because I wouldn't have gone out and bought one, and I only use it for Netflix, and 2 of them are now working, and when I turn Netflix on, it always wants to update. Like, I don't know how many versions.
God, no.
Well, exactly. Because on one of the other ones, I updated it, and in the update process, it requires you to do a reset and then re-put in your account information. And I, at that point, bricked the machine because I tried every password I could think of, and I do remember at that point in time I was using weird passwords. Like I kind of have an algorithm for passwords that way. Even if I forget a password, I can figure it out. And I know there was a point in time where I was doing something different, and it was then. So I cannot, for the life of me, figure out what the password is for that, and I thus can't access it. And because it's attached to the email address that no longer exists, they can't say, "Oh, we'll send it to your email, and then you can establish your account." And so it's a whole thing. So I've just been not updating and not doing anything with it. So if I were to get Disney Plus, I would probably have to do it on my Xbox One, or I don't have a smart TV yet. So the next step would be just.
Or you have to get like a Fire Stick or a Roku stick or something.
Well, I have a Fire Stick, but I can't stand the thing. It doesn't work well. So
it's like a first gen or.
Yeah, it was like very early. It worked good when I first got it, but it's
with all of the updates. It's like this is probably all of the devices. It's a whole new episode, so we're gonna stop right after my point.
Yeah, well, let's just get to the world building task.
Let's get to the world building task. Okay. Thank you for everyone who's still here.
I know. Sorry, guys. A weird tangent. Maybe cut all that out.
Yeah. What is the world building task of the day, Michael?
World building task is what is a good cast for your story. So think about what your story requires, and then write up a list of, okay, well, I'm going to have a hero needs a love interest. There's obviously got to be an antagonist to that hero. They're going to be, family members, a mentor. There'll be a hero's journey. So that's going to require X, Y, and Z. So
yeah, exactly. And remember, there's not a formula, but when you pick a genre, there kind of is.
Yeah, there kind of is. Or if you want a formula, if you haven't written stories like this before and you're just getting into it, then look up formulas, because I guarantee you somebody has said, okay, here's the basic formula.
I mean, part of every genre, the reason it's a genre is because it's a formula.
Yeah,
the story is a formula, and you need certain characters to perform certain tasks. So that's a great place to start for anything. So for the real world task, take your story and your cast, run it past a friend,
someone you trust,
someone you trust, but make sure that if they can't follow the characters as you're explaining it to them in person, realize that you're going to have a huge task ahead of you, that it might be too complicated. You might need to merge some more together. And this is the mistake that was in that's the whole final trilogy of Star Wars. Is there were lots of things that weren't needed for the story. Hell, that probably could have been one movie. The actual story that happened in all three. There were lots of side scenes that were cool and great set pieces and beautiful graphics, but when you're telling a story, every scene has a purpose, even if it's to just set a trait in a character, to define why sword is so important. There is a purpose to everything, and when there's not a purpose, it should be cut. When you're developing it, write it. But when you're going through and editing, you're going to cut that stuff out, or you should. So, unless you're trying to make 3 movies out of one. So go ahead.
I.e., The Hobbit.
The Hobbit, exactly. Oh God, I love the Lord of the Rings. But if you don't have someone who's at least like geek side enough to go through it with you, you can always join the Facebook Undercroft. So if you go to facebook.com/groups/Undercroft, or just search, Undercroft, and we're the world building version of it.
And if you want to help the show, I know you're doing a lot of your shopping on Amazon these days. Go to www.gardul.com/Amazon, GARDUL.com/Amazon. It'll take you to Amazon. It's just cuts through our site, and anything you buy will give the show a little help.
We don't increase the prices by a dime.
No, we don't.
If you want to take some profits away from a big company, shop through our affiliate link. It'll help, I guess. I can't think of a really good reason.
Because it bites into the seller's profit.
Yes. Screw Amazon by buying products from them through our affiliate link.
There you go.
All right. So we do put it there for your convenience, so use it. Just realize we will get a tiny cutback. It's awesome.
It's because we control Amazon.
We are we are Jeff Bezos. We are one. No, we're not. Have a great day, folks.
Have a good one, guys.
Cut about half of this episode out. I don't know.
Keep safe.
The non-essential parts. Bye-bye.
So all of you are talking.
Thank you so much for listening to the World Builders Anvil.
We would love it if you would share the World Builders Anvil with 2 of your friends.
And so would they.
If they are unfamiliar with podcasts, then you get to introduce them to the wonderful world of podcasting.
Take them to Stitcher or iTunes, or best of all, just send them to our website, www.gardul.com.
That's GARDUL.com.
Now strike while the mithril's hot.